You have been taught that this emptiness is a flaw, a failure of your own spirit. You have been told to fill it, to run from it, to distract yourself from its hollow ache. I am here to tell you that everything you believe about this feeling is a profound and tragic mistake. This emptiness is not your enemy. It is not a void to be feared. It is, in fact, the most precise spiritual signal you will ever receive. It is the unmistakable evidence that the temporary, the material, the world of form has reached its limit in your consciousness. It is the deep, inner soul crying out that it is finished with the old and is now prepared at last to receive the new. What you perceive as emptiness is, in truth, a sacred capacity being formed within you. Stay with this, and you will discover why this feeling is the necessary prelude to a fulfillment that the world can neither give nor take away. We have all stood in that place, in the quiet of our own hearts, when the world seems to fall silent. The achievements we chased feel like dust. The relationships we nurtured leave a faint echo. The possessions we accumulated stand as hollow monuments. And in that stillness, a single, unsettling question arises. Is this all there is? The world, of course, has a ready-made answer for this feeling. It tells you that you are not enough, that you need to acquire more, do more, be more. It prescribes a frantic search for the next promotion, the next vacation, the next purchase, the next relationship, promising that this next thing will be the one to finally plug the drain. So you run, you strive, you fill your calendar and your mind with noise, all in a desperate attempt to outpace the quiet ache within. But I tell you, this is the great deception. This running, this striving, is the very mechanism that perpetuates the emptiness. You are trying to fill a spiritual void with material answers, and it is a geometric impossibility. It is like trying to satisfy a deep, physical thirst by painting a glass of water. The image does nothing for the parched throat. The form cannot quench the need that exists on an entirely different level of being. Consider the simple, everyday experience of outgrowing a beloved book from your youth. There was a time when that story held you captive. Its characters were your companions, its world your escape. You could read it again and again, each time feeling a sense of completion. Then, one day, you pick it up and the magic is gone. The words are the same, the plot unchanged, but something within you has shifted. The book feels small, its lessons simplistic. It no longer fills the space in your consciousness it once did. This is not the book's failure, nor is it yours. It is a signal. It is evidence that your capacity for understanding has expanded. Your inner being has grown, and the old container can no longer hold the new consciousness. The emptiness you feel for that book is, in fact, a testament to your growth. Now, transpose this onto the grand stage of your life. The career that once ignited your passion now feels like a series of mechanical tasks. The social circles that once provided comfort now feel superficial. The philosophies and beliefs that once offered absolute answers now feel confining. This is not a sign that your life is broken. It is the exact opposite. It is the most precise indication that your spiritual identity is evolving. The forms of your life, the job, the relationships, the ideologies were like that beloved book. They served a divine purpose for a season. They held a specific measure of truth for the being you were then. But now, the soul within is pressing against its confines. The old wineskins can no longer hold the new wine. This feeling of emptiness is the sound of the old structure cracking. It is the necessary collapse that must precede any new construction. When a builder erects a new skyscraper, he cannot simply build on top of the old, outdated structure. He must first clear the land. He must create a vacant lot, an empty space, a seeming void where something once stood. To the passerby, this looks like loss, like destruction. But the architect knows this emptiness is the most critical phase of the entire project. It is the only ground upon which the new, greater vision can be realized. Your sense of emptiness is that sacred, cleared ground. It is the proof that the architect within is preparing for a new expression of life, one that the previous structure of your understanding could never support. We misinterpret this cleared ground as a wasteland because we are terrified of the silence. We rush to plant weeds in it, new distractions, new attachments, new intellectual concepts, just to see something growing there. We are afraid that if we do not fill it, nothing ever will. But this is where the great transition occurs. This is the pivot from the life of seeking to the life of receptivity. All your life, you have been taught to seek, to grasp, to attain. You have been the active force trying to capture God, truth, fulfillment, as if they were objects to be acquired. But in this state of emptiness, that entire paradigm is revealed as futile. You are being led, often through the sheer exhaustion of your own efforts, to the end of seeking. You are being brought to the bank of the river, not with a cup, but with a soul that has been hollowed out into a vast vessel. The activity is no longer yours. The striving must cease. The emptiness is not a vacuum that you must fill. It is a capacity that is being prepared for a divine impouring. It is the unformed, potential space that awaits the presence of the infinite. The thirst you feel is not the problem. It is the evidence of the coming water. The hunger is not the enemy. It is the confirmation that a feast is being prepared. This emptiness is the soul's deepest prayer, not spoken in words, but lived as a profound and holy silence, creating the exact space where grace can finally make its home. This collapse is not a gentle fading, it is a fundamental and necessary disintegration. We speak of the world of form, and this is everything that can be perceived by the senses, everything that can be grasped by the mind, everything that has a beginning and, inevitably, an end. Your identity as a professional, your role in your family, your standing in the community, your carefully constructed beliefs about God, about life, about yourself. These are all forms. They are the furniture with which we have filled the rooms of our consciousness, and for a long time, they provided comfort and a sense of location. We believed they were solid, permanent, and real. But the spiritual signal of emptiness is the first tremor that reveals their true nature. They are temporary structures, and they are failing under the weight of a greater reality. Consider the simple, powerful experience of grief. When someone you love passes from this world, the form of that relationship, their physical presence, their voice, their daily role in your life shatters. The world tells you that you have suffered a loss, and indeed, from the perspective of the world of form. This is undeniably true. But in the profound emptiness that follows, a strange and sacred thing can occur. The les form of the relationship has vanished, but the essence of it, the love, the connection, the indelible impact on your soul, often becomes more palpable, more real than ever before. You begin to feel a presence that is not dependent on physical proximity or conversation. What has happened? The form has collapsed, and in its dissolution, the eternal substance behind the form is revealed for the first time in its pure state. The form was merely the container. The emptiness allows you to experience the content directly. This is the secret purpose behind every collapse in your life. It is not destruction for its own sake, but a violent and gracious removal of the container that has become too small for your understanding of what it held. This principle operates in every facet of a seeking life. You may have spent years building a professional identity around a certain title or skill set. You derived your sense of worth and purpose from it. Then, through a layoff, a shift in the market, or simply an inner disillusionment, that form collapses. The title is gone, the function is obsolete. The initial feeling is one of terrifying emptiness. Oh, who am I now? That echoes in the silence. The world urges you to immediately scramble and build a new form, to find another title, to grasp a new role. But the spiritual signal is asking you to pause in that emptiness. It is inviting you to discover that your true identity was never in the title or the job description. Your worth, your capacity for intelligence and creativity, your very being, exists independently of that form. The collapse of the career was the demolition of a set that had served its purpose, allowing you, perhaps for the first time, to stand on the unchanging stage of your own innate being. The same is true of our most cherished spiritual and intellectual concepts. We build altars in our minds to specific ideas of God, to political ideologies, to philosophies of how life should work. We cling to these forms as if they were truth itself. Then, life presents us with a circumstance that our form cannot explain, cannot accommodate. A tragedy occurs that our concept of a benevolent God cannot reconcile. A political leader we championed reveals feet of clay. A lifelong belief is proven incomplete. The form of our understanding cracks, and we feel a deep intellectual emptiness, a crisis of meaning. We feel lost, adrift. Yet, this is the precise moment of greatest opportunity. The collapse of the conceptual form is the only thing that can free us from the prison of a known God, a packaged truth. It creates the vacancy necessary for a direct, unmediated experience of the infinite that can never be contained within any single dogma or philosophy. The emptiness is the burning away of the map, forcing you to look up and behold the actual territory. It is the silent, potent space where the living God, not the conceptual one, can make itself known. The forms were like training wheels. Their collapse is the evidence that you are finally ready to ride the bike, to know balance not as a theory, but as a lived reality. This is the arduous, glorious transition from a faith built on words to a knowing born of experience. And it cannot happen until the world of form you relied upon has fallen utterly away. And so we arrive at the threshold of this sacred vacancy. The old structures have proven their temporariness, and their collapse has left a silent, open space within. The instinctual panic begins to subside, replaced by a new and unfamiliar question: if I am not to rebuild the old, and if I am not to frantically chase a new form, then what is the purpose of this emptiness? The answer is the most profound secret of the spiritual path. This emptiness is not a void to be filled, but a capacity to be utilized. It is the making of room. For your entire life, your consciousness has been furnished with the noise of the world, its demands, its definitions, its endless cycle of acquisition and loss. There was no space for anything else. Now, with that furniture cleared away, there is, for the first time, room. This is the sacred capacity, the hollowed-out vessel that is now prepared to receive something of an entirely different order. Imagine a student of a great master painter. For years, the student fills canvas after canvas, practicing techniques, mimicking styles, trying to capture the beauty they see in the world. Their studio is cluttered with their own efforts, their mind crowded with the rules of composition and color theory. Then, one day, a moment of utter frustration arrives. They throw down their brush, seeing all their work as shallow imitation. They clear their studio, leaving a single, pristine, empty canvas on the easel. They sit in silence, devoid of any idea of what to paint. In that moment of surrendered emptiness, something new can flow in. It is no longer the student's limited skill attempting to create, but a universal inspiration moving through them. The masterpiece that eventually emerges feels as if it painted itself. The student provided the cleared space and the disciplined hand, but the creative impulse, the true genius, came from a source beyond their own crowded mind. Your emptiness is that pristine canvas. It is the necessary clearing that makes inspiration possible. This principle operates in the most practical aspects of daily living. Consider a moment of genuine, unexpected insight, the solution to a problem that has plagued you for weeks at work. You have struggled, you have forced, you have filled your mind with data and strategies to no avail. Finally, in exhaustion, you let it go. You take a walk, you take a shower, you fall asleep. And in that moment of mental emptiness, of non-striving, the answer arrives, full, blown, and perfect, as if gifted to you from nowhere. What happened? You stopped trying to fill the space with your own limited reasoning. You created a vacancy in your consciousness, and a higher order of intelligence and intuitive knowing flowed into that space. The emptiness you cultivated was the very condition that allowed for the revelation. This is the dynamic at play on the grand scale of your spiritual life. The feelings of lack, of incompletion, of yearning were not mistakes. They were the initial stirrings of this sacred capacity. They were the soul's way of saying, I am making room for something the world cannot provide. We misinterpret this process because we assume the solution must be of the same nature as the problem. We feel a lack of peace and try to acquire it from a quiet environment. We feel a lack of love and try to extract it from another person. We feel a lack of power and try to seize it through status or wealth. But these are all attempts to fill a spiritual vacuum with material substitutes. The truth is that the peace, the love, the power you seek are already present as qualities of the infinite. They are not created, they are revealed. They cannot be grasped, they can only be received. Your emptiness is the receptive state, the inner alignment that allows this revelation to occur. You have spent a lifetime building a self, an ego, a personal sense of I. That is the primary occupant of your consciousness. This I is a collection of memories, opinions, desires, and fears. It is a form, and like all forms, it is limited and temporary. The collapse you have experienced is the cracking of this very shell. The emptiness you feel is the space that appears as this self-constructed identity begins to recede. It feels like death because it is a death, the death of the illusion of a separate self, sufficient self. But this death is the prerequisite for rebirth. It is the making of room for the one true identity, the divine. I am. That is your eternal being. You are not becoming a better person. You are dying to the person you thought you were, so that the Christ, the Buddha, nature, the divine reality of you can have a temple in which to dwell. The emptiness is the sanctuary being prepared. It is the quiet, the stillness, the surrendered space where the whisper of the infinite can finally be heard not as an external voice, but as your own. This sacred capacity, this hollowed out vessel of your being now stands ready, but nature, in its infinite wisdom, abhors a vacuum. This is a spiritual law as immutable as any physical one. The emptiness you have endured is not a final state. It is a transitional one, a state of profound potential. It is the deep, silent inhalation before a divine exhalation. What rushes into this prepared space is not of this world. It cannot be bought, earned, or achieved through any act of personal will, for your personal will was the very barrier that had to be dissolved to create the opening. This is the moment of divine impouring, where the finite yields to the infinite and becomes its conscious vessel. Think of a canyon carved over millennia by the relentless flow of a river. The river has long since changed its course, and now the canyon stands, a vast and empty silence between towering cliffs. Then the sun rises. Slowly, imperceptibly at first, light begins to fill the chasm. It pours into every crevice, illuminates every rock face, warms the cold stone. The canyon does not grasp at the light. It does not strive to become luminous. It simply rests in its own openness, and the light, by its very nature, fills it completely. The canyon's emptiness is its entire capacity to receive the sun's glory. You are that canyon. The struggles, the losses, the disillusionments, they were the river that carved you deep and wide. Now, in the stillness that remains, a light that is not your own begins its inevitable descent. It is the light of pure consciousness, of unconditional love, of unshakable peace. This is the divine impouring. It is not something you do. It is something that happens to you when you are finally, authentically, empty enough to allow it. This is the experience the mystics of all ages have attempted to describe, not as a rare supernatural event, but as the natural state of a consciousness that has been cleared of its obstructions. It is what happens when you stop trying to be loving and instead become transparent to love itself. In a human relationship, when you cease demanding that another person fill your emptiness and instead rest in this inner spaciousness, you may find a love flowing through you that is purer, more patient, and more unconditional than any you could have mustered on your own. It is not your love for them. It is love using your relationship as its channel. The same is true of creativity. The artist, the writer, the musician who touches the eternal does so not from a place of crowded ambition, but from a place of surrendered emptiness. They become the flute through which the universal breath is played. The melody that emerges feels gifted because it is. This impouring is also the source of true power, not power over anything, but the power of unassailable being. Consider a moment of true crisis when all your personal resources, your cleverness, your strength, your plans have been exhausted. You stand at the absolute end of yourself. In that moment of total surrender, a curious calm may descend. A clarity emerges from the chaos. A right action presents itself, not as a calculated decision, but as an undeniable knowing. This is not your power. It is the power of the infinite flowing into the vacuum of your surrendered selfhood. It is the evidence that the divine impouring is not merely a comfort. It is the activation of a higher functionality. You are not being rescued from the situation. You are being operated by a wisdom that understands the situation perfectly. This is the great transition from the life of personal accomplishment to the life of divine demonstration. You are no longer the source, striving to generate goodness, truth, and power. You are the medium through which these qualities, inherent in the infinite, are made visible on the plane of human experience. The emptiness was the preparation for this. Every ache of loneliness was carving out a greater capacity for the experience of divine presence. Every failure was dismantling the illusion of a self-powered success. Every bout of confusion was clearing the way for a knowing that comes from beyond the intellect. The vessel has been scarred clean by the very fires of experience you thought would destroy you. And now, in the quiet readiness of this moment, the first drops of an ocean of grace begin to fall. It is a feeling of being filled from a source within your own being, yet deeper than anything you have ever called I. It is a sustenance that does not depend on external conditions. It is a peace that validates itself, not by the absence of trouble, but by its palpable presence in the midst of it. This is the beginning of living not from the outside, in acquiring what you lack, but from the inside out, expressing the infinite fullness that you eternally are. This divine impouring is not an exchange of one temporary condition for another, a better state of mind to replace a worse one. What is flowing into the sacred capacity within you is of an entirely different substance. It is the movement from the temporary to the permanent. All your life, you have been building your home on the shifting sands of the external world, the sands of praise and blame, gain and loss, pleasure and pain. You sought security in things that are, by their very nature, subject to change. The emptiness you experienced was the storm that washed that sand away, revealing, perhaps for the first time, the bedrock that was there all along. This is the transition from a life based on the ephemeral to a life grounded in the eternal. It is the discovery of a center of gravity within yourself that does not shift with the changing tides of circumstance. Consider the profound difference between the happiness derived from a new possession and the joy that arises for no reason at all. You buy a new car, and for a time, there is a thrill, a satisfaction. But even in the midst of it, that this feeling is temporary. The car will age. It will get a scratch. It will eventually become ordinary, and the happiness will fade. It was dependent entirely on the condition of the object. Now, contrast that with a moment of pure, uncaused joy. You are walking in a park, not thinking of any great achievement or acquisition, and suddenly a deep, quiet gladness wells up from within. It is not tied to anything. It simply is. This joy does not fade when you leave the park. It is not threatened by a scratch on your car or a problem at work. It exists independently of the world of form. This is a taste of the permanent. It is not something you get, it is something you are, when the obstacles to its awareness are removed. The emptiness cleared the obstacles, and the impouring is the steady, unwavering flow of this inherent, permanent reality into your conscious experience. This is the foundation of a peace that passes all understanding. The world's idea of peace is the absence of conflict. It is a fragile, temporary state constantly threatened by the next phone call, the next headline, the next personal dilemma. The peace of the permanent is something entirely different. It is not the absence of storm, but the presence of a profound stillness at the very core of the storm. It is like the depths of the ocean, where a great calm prevails regardless of the hurricanes raging on the surface. Your life on the surface, the world of relationships, careers, and health may be in tremendous turmoil. Waves of challenge may be crashing down. But once you have made contact with the permanent through the doorway of your own emptiness, you discover a level of your own being that remains untouched, unmoved, and eternally serene. The problems are real on their own level, but they are no longer able to dictate the state of your soul. You have found the one thing that cannot be taken from you. This transition redefines your entire relationship with loss. When your sense of security is invested in the temporary, every loss is a catastrophe. The loss of a job feels like the loss of identity. The loss of a relationship feels like the loss of love itself. The loss of health feels like the loss of life. But when your foundation shifts to the permanent, loss is revealed in its true light. It is only the form that changes. The essence remains. You may lose the specific role of a job, but the intelligence and creativity that you expressed through it are not lost. They are qualities of your eternal being and will find new expression. You may lose the form of a relationship, but if that connection was rooted in truth, the love itself does not die, it transforms, it becomes a different kind of presence in your life. You are not your body, and therefore the decline of the body, while a real experience cannot touch the core of your identity, which is spirit. The permanent is that which never comes and never goes. It is the I am that was before you had a name, that is with you now, and that will be when all the names and forms of this world have faded into silence. To build your life on this is to become unshakable. The winds may blow and the rains may fall, but the house built on this rock will not fall, for it is not a house you built, but the very rock of reality itself, upon which you have been graciously allowed to stand. This entire journey culminates in the most profound and practical shift a human being can make, the transition from seeking to receiving. For your entire life, you have been the seeker. You have been the active agent, striving, grasping, and reaching for God, for truth, for peace, for fulfillment. You have been like a person in a dark room, frantically searching for a light switch, believing that your next effort, your next spiritual technique, your next profound understanding would be the one to finally illuminate the darkness. The emptiness was the exhaustion of that search. It was the final, humbling admission that you cannot find the light by your own efforts, because you have been the one operating in the dark. The collapse of the world of form was the collapse of the seeker itself. And in that collapse, a new posture becomes possible, not of grasping, but of allowing, not of striving, but of yielding, not of seeking, but of receiving. Imagine a farmer at the end of a long, dry season. He has tilled the soil, he has planted the seeds, he has done everything within his power to coax life from the ground. But the earth remains hard, and the seeds lie dormant. He stands in his field, his efforts exhausted, and he looks to the sky. There is nothing left for him to do. He cannot command the clouds. He cannot force the rain. His only remaining role is to be receptive. He must wait with an open and prepared field for the gift of rain that can only come from a source beyond his own labor. Your spiritual journey has reached this exact point. You have tilled the soil of your consciousness through your struggles and your yearning. You have planted the seeds of desire for truth. The emptiness has been the long drought that has brought you to the end of your own doing. Now, you are the farmer in the field, no longer striving, but standing in a state of profound, open receptivity, waiting for the rain of grace that you could never command, but can only welcome. This is not a passive state. It is the most active state of all, for it is an activity of the soul, not the ego. It is the active practice of stillness. It is the vigilant cultivation of inner silence. It is the conscious relinquishment of the mental commentary that insists you must be doing something to earn your spiritual keep. In your daily life, this looks like a fundamental change in your response to challenge. Before, when a problem arose, your mind would immediately kick into gear, seeking a solution, wrestling with the issue, trying to figure it out from the limited repository of your past experience and knowledge. Now, there is a new first step. That first step is to become still. It is to consciously acknowledge the emptiness of your own solutions, to create a space of inner silence, and to wait. You are waiting for the impouring, for the intuitive knowing, for the right action to be revealed from a level of intelligence that is not your own. You are moving from being the frantic problem solver to being the clear channel through which a divine solution can emerge. This is the secret behind what the world calls miracles or inspiration. The great composer does not seek the melody. He becomes quiet, and the melody seeks him. The brilliant scientist does not force the breakthrough. He contemplates the data, and then, in a moment of non-striving, the elegant formula presents itself. They have all, in their own way, learned to stop seeking and start receiving. You are learning to apply this to the very substance of your life, to your sense of peace, your sense of identity, your sense of purpose. You are no longer trying to build a meaningful life. You are allowing your life to be filled with the meaning that flows from the infinite. You are no longer trying to become a good person. You are surrendering the person you thought you were so that inherent goodness of your divine nature can express itself without obstruction. The feeling of emptiness was the final, desperate cry of the seeker, the I, that wanted to achieve its own salvation. The fulfillment you now sense is the quiet, steady hum of the receiver. The being that has realized its salvation was present all along, waiting only for the noise of seeking to cease, so it could be heard, so it could be felt, so it could be known as your own eternal and unshakable reality. The search is over, not because you have found the object you were looking for, but because you have awakened to the truth that you are, and always have been, that for which you were searching.